The grocery bags felt heavier than they should as Noah Bennett walked through the parking garage beneath the Phoenix shopping center. His 7-year-old son, Jacob, walked close beside him, one small hand gripping the hem of Noah's jacket, a habit the boy had developed in the 6 months since his mother's death. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered intermittently, casting shadows that danced across the oil-stained concrete. "Dad, can we get ice cream when we get home?" Jacob asked, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. "Maybe tomorrow, buddy," Noah said, shifting the bags to his other hand. "It's already past your bedtime." Noah was 42 but felt a decade older. The grief had aged him in ways that went beyond the gray creeping into his brown hair. Since Emma's death from breast cancer, every day felt like walking through deep water, exhausting, disorienting, and endless. He'd taken a leave from his job as an accountant to care for Jacob full-time, watching his savings dwindle while trying to be both mother and father to a boy who still cried for his mom at night. Tonight's shopping trip had stretched longer than planned. Jacob had melted down in the cereal aisle, refusing to accept that they couldn't afford the expensive brand Emma used to buy. Noah had knelt beside him on the supermarket floor, ignoring the stares from other shoppers, and held his son until the tears stopped. These were the moments no one prepared you for, the small, devastating reminders that their family would never be whole again. The parking garage was nearly empty at 9:30 on a Wednesday night. Their 10-year-old Honda Civic sat in the far corner, exactly where Noah always parked it, under a security camera that he'd checked was functional. Emma had taught him that. Always park under cameras, always be aware of surroundings. She'd been a district attorney, tough and careful, the kind of person who planned for every contingency, except cancer. That one had blindsided them both. "Dad, those men are looking at us," Jacob whispered, his grip tightening on Noah's jacket. Noah glanced up and felt his stomach drop. 3 men had materialized from behind a concrete pillar, spreading out in a loose semicircle that blocked the path to their car. They were in their 20s, dressed in dark clothes that seemed chosen for concealment rather than style. The one in the middle, tall with a spiderweb tattoo crawling up his neck, smiled without warmth. "Evening," Spiderweb said, his voice carrying an edge that made Noah's instincts scream danger. "That's a nice watch you got there." Noah's hand instinctively moved to the Omega Seamaster on his wrist, Emma's last birthday gift to him, purchased during a trip to San Diego when they'd still believed they had decades together. It was worth more than his car. "We don't want any trouble," Noah said, his voice steady, despite the fear flooding his system. He positioned himself slightly in front of Jacob. "Just let us get to our car." "See, that's the thing," Spiderweb said, stepping closer. His companions moved with him, practiced and coordinated. "We're having trouble, money trouble, and you look like someone who could help us out." Noah's mind raced through options. Run? He couldn't outrun 3 men while carrying grocery bags and a 7-year-old. Scream? The garage was isolated, and sound didn't carry well here. Give them the watch and wallet? That was probably the smart choice, but the watch was the last piece of Emma he had that still felt like her. "Dad?" Jacob's voice was small and frightened. "It's okay, Jacob," Noah lied, the words tasting like ash. "Everything's going to be okay." Spiderweb's patience evaporated like morning fog. "Wallet and watch. Now. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Noah slowly reached for his wallet with his free hand, the grocery bag still clutched in the other. "Take it. Just don't hurt my son." "Smart man," Spiderweb said, reaching out. But Noah's hand trembled, exhaustion, fear, grief, all of it combining, and the wallet slipped from his fingers, falling to the concrete with a slap that sounded unnaturally loud. Spiderweb's expression darkened. "You dropping things to stall? Think someone's gonna save you?" He nodded to his companions. "Teach him some manners." What happened next unfolded with horrifying speed. The first punch came from the left, catching Noah in the ribs and driving the air from his lungs. The grocery bags exploded as they hit the ground, cans rolling across concrete, bread crushed under boots. Noah staggered, trying to stay between the attackers and Jacob, but a second man grabbed his shoulder and spun him around. "No! Leave my dad alone!" Jacob's scream was shrill with terror. "Shut up, kid," one of the attackers snarled. Noah swung wildly, his fist connecting with something, jaw or shoulder, he couldn't tell. But he wasn't a fighter. He'd never been in a real fight in his life. These men were experienced, coordinated, and merciless. A fist crashed into his face, splitting his lip and filling his mouth with the copper taste of blood. Another blow landed in his stomach, doubling him over. He fell to his knees, arms raised to protect his head. As kicks rained down on his back and sides, the pain was immediate and overwhelming, but worse was the sound of Jacob crying, pleading, begging them to stop. Noah tried to get up, tried to fight back, but a boot caught him in the chest and sent him sprawling. "Dad, Dad, please stop hurting him." Jacob's voice broke on a sob. "Maybe we should teach the kid a lesson too," one of the attackers said, laughing, "about not interfering." That suggestion penetrated Noah's pain-clouded mind like an electric shock. He looked up through swelling eyes to see one of the men turning toward Jacob. His son stood frozen, tears streaming down his face, too terrified to run, too young to understand real danger when it wore human faces. "No," Noah gasped, trying to crawl toward his son. "Please, he's just a kid." Spiderweb kicked him again, this time in the head, and Noah's vision exploded with stars. He could taste blood, feel it running warm down his face. The world tilted and swam, consciousness threatening to slip away. Through the ringing in his ears, he heard their laughter, cruel and casual, the sound of people who'd done this before and would do it again. Jacob's crying had become a continuous, high-pitched wail of pure terror. Noah tried to focus on that sound, using it as an anchor to consciousness. He had to get up, had to protect his son, had to... A voice cut through the chaos like a blade through silk, calm and absolutely devoid of fear. "That's enough." Ethan Morrison had been heading to his truck after a late workout at the 24-hour gym when he'd heard the child's scream echo through the parking structure. 17 years as a Navy SEAL had taught him to recognize certain sounds, gunfire, explosions, and the particular quality of terror in a child's voice. He'd moved toward the sound without thinking, muscle memory and training overriding any instinct for self-preservation. What he saw made his jaw tighten with cold anger. 3 men beating someone on the ground while a small boy screamed. Cowards picking an easy target. The same kind of bullies who'd made Ethan's childhood hell before he'd learned to fight back, before the Navy had turned his anger into discipline and his discipline into a weapon. "That's enough," Ethan repeated, his voice carrying the absolute authority of someone who expected to be obeyed. Spiderweb turned, his expression initially annoyed, then calculating as he sized up the newcomer. Ethan was 6'2" and lean, dressed in gym clothes that revealed arms marked with the kind of muscle that came from functional strength rather than vanity. But what really gave him away, to anyone who knew what to look for, was the way he stood. Balanced, relaxed, but with a readiness that suggested coiled violence held in perfect check. "Walk away, hero," Spiderweb said. "This doesn't concern you." Actually, it does. Ethan moved forward, his steps measured and deliberate. "See, I have this thing about grown men who beat up civilians in front of children. It really bothers me." The 3 attackers spread out slightly, recognizing a threat but still confident in their numbers. Spiderweb pulled something from his jacket. A knife, the blade catching the flickering fluorescent light. "Your funeral, man," he said, smiling. Ethan didn't smile back. "Last chance. Walk away now." Spiderweb lunged, the knife aimed at Ethan's midsection in a move that suggested he'd done this before, But Ethan had fought insurgents in Fallujah, tangoed with hostage-takers in Somalia, and survived close-quarters combat in conditions these street thugs couldn't imagine. The knife thrust was almost comically slow to his trained perception. He sidestepped, caught Spiderweb's wrist, and twisted with precise leverage. The knife clattered to the concrete. Before Spiderweb could process what had happened, Ethan's elbow crashed into his solar plexus, driving the air from his lungs, followed by a controlled strike to the side of his head. Spiderweb crumpled, not unconscious, but certainly no longer interested in fighting. The second attacker came from Ethan's left, a haymaker punch that telegraphed itself with shoulder movement. Ethan ducked under it, drove his fist into the man's liver with surgical precision, and swept his legs out from under him. The attacker hit the concrete hard enough to make a sound that echoed through the garage. The third man hesitated, seeing his companions neutralized in less than 5 seconds. He took a step back, hands raised. "Smart," Ethan said. "Stay down, stay quiet, and maybe this ends without anyone going to the hospital." But the man's pride overrode his survival instinct. He rushed forward with a roar, trying to tackle Ethan. It was almost sad how predictable it was. Ethan sidestepped, used the man's momentum against him, and put him face first into a concrete pillar with controlled force. Not enough to cause permanent damage, but definitely enough to make him reconsider his life choices. The entire encounter had lasted maybe 15 seconds. Ethan turned to the man on the ground, blood on his face, groceries scattered around him, trying to push himself up with trembling arms. The boy was still crying, now frozen in place with a different kind of shock. "Hey," Ethan said gently, kneeling beside Noah, but keeping the attackers in his peripheral vision. "I'm Ethan. You're safe now. Can you tell me your name?" "Noah," the man gasped, spitting blood. "My son, Jacob, is he—" "Your son's okay. Not hurt, just scared." Ethan helped Noah into a sitting position, his trained eyes cataloging injuries. Split lip, probable broken ribs, facial contusions, possible concussion. "Take slow breaths. I'm going to call 911. Get you checked out." "The watch," Noah mumbled, his eyes not quite focusing properly. "They wanted my wife's gift." Jacob suddenly broke from his paralysis and ran to his father, throwing his arms around Noah's neck. "Dad, I thought they were going to kill you. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't help. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "Shh, buddy, it's okay," Noah whispered, wincing as he wrapped his arms around his son. "You did everything right. You're safe. That's all that matters." Ethan pulled out his phone and dialed 911, giving the dispatcher their location and a brief summary of the situation. Then he turned his attention to the 3 attackers, who were in various states of groaning and trying to recover. "You 3, hands where I can see them," Ethan said, his voice carrying absolute command. When Spiderweb tried to inch toward his knife, Ethan picked it up and slid it across the concrete, far out of reach. "Police are on the way. I suggest you stay exactly where you are." "You broke my ribs," the second attacker wheezed. "Probably just bruised," Ethan corrected. "If I'd wanted to break them, you'd know the difference." Noah was struggling to stay conscious, his head lolling against Jacob's shoulder. Ethan moved closer, checking his pulse, elevated but steady, and examining his pupils. Definite concussion, possible internal injuries. "Noah, stay with me," Ethan said. "How many fingers am I holding up?" 3, Noah managed. "Is my son really okay?" "He's fine, scared but not hurt." Ethan looked at Jacob, whose face was streaked with tears and whose hands were shaking. "Jacob, that's your name, right?" The boy nodded, not letting go of his father. "Jacob, you were very brave," Ethan said, his voice gentle. "I know that was scary, but your dad's going to be okay. The ambulance is coming, and the police will be here soon." "Are you a soldier?" Jacob asked, his voice small. "Navy SEAL," Ethan said. "Similar idea. Like in the movies?" "Sort of, but with less explosions and more paperwork." Ethan offered a small smile, trying to ease the terror he saw in the child's eyes. "What were you and your dad doing out so late?" "Grocery shopping," Jacob said. "We had to get food for the week. Dad says we have to stick to a budget now that Mom's—" His voice trailed off, and Ethan understood immediately. The worn clothes, the old car, the late-night shopping to take advantage of sales, the watch that was clearly expensive but old enough to be a gift from better times. This was a family struggling, a single father trying to hold things together. "Your mom?" Ethan prompted gently. "She died," Noah said, his voice thick with emotion and pain. "Cancer. 6 months ago." Ethan felt something twist in his chest. He'd seen a lot of pain in his career, combat casualties, civilian victims, the collateral damage of war. But there was something particularly cruel about this. A man trying to provide for his son, to maintain some normalcy in the wake of devastating loss, getting attacked for a watch and whatever cash he had in his wallet. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. "The watch," Noah said again, his hand fumbling at his wrist. "I can't lose it. It's all I have left of her." Ethan checked. The watch was still there, surprisingly. "It's still on your wrist. They didn't get it." Tears leaked from Noah's swollen eyes. "Emma gave it to me. Our last birthday together. She died 3 weeks later." Jacob was crying again, quietly, his face pressed against his father's chest. 2 police cruisers pulled into the garage, lights flashing, followed shortly by an ambulance. Ethan stood and raised his hands slightly, making sure the arriving officers could see he wasn't a threat. He'd been through this enough times to know how to handle it. "Officers, I'm the one who called it in," Ethan said calmly. "My name is Ethan Morrison, former Navy SEAL, current civilian. I witnessed 3 men assaulting this civilian and his minor son. I intervened to stop the assault. The 3 suspects are here, no weapons currently accessible, though one had a knife which is on the ground approximately 10 feet to my left." The lead officer, a veteran with grey in his mustache, took in the scene with experienced eyes, Noah bleeding and barely conscious, Jacob clinging to him, 3 men on the ground in various states of pain, and Ethan standing calm and professional. "Anyone need immediate medical attention besides the victim?" the officer asked. "The suspects have minor injuries from being restrained," Ethan said. "Nothing life-threatening." Paramedics rushed to Noah, gently separating him from Jacob so they could assess his injuries. One of them knelt beside the boy. "Hey, buddy, I'm Sarah. Can you tell me if you're hurt anywhere?" Jacob shook his head, watching anxiously as the other paramedics worked on his father. "Is my dad going to be okay?" "We're going to take very good care of him," Sarah assured him. At Desert Hope Medical Center, Noah was diagnosed with 3 cracked ribs, a concussion, severe facial contusions, and assorted bruising. He'd been lucky. The damage could have been much worse. Jacob sat in a chair beside his father's hospital bed, refusing to leave, his small hand wrapped around Noah's fingers. Ethan had given his statement to the police, provided contact information, and was preparing to leave when a nurse found him in the waiting room. "Mr. Morrison, the patient is asking for you." Noah looked better with the blood cleaned off and an IV providing fluids and pain medication. His face was a canvas of bruises, but his eyes were clearer now. "I wanted to thank you," Noah said, his voice rough but steady. "If you hadn't been there—" "You don't need to thank me," Ethan said. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," Noah said firmly. "No, they wouldn't have. There were other people in that garage. I saw cars leaving, people walking by before it started. No one stopped. No one helped." He paused, swallowing hard. "Jacob was watching me get beaten, and I couldn't protect him. I couldn't protect my own son." "You did protect him," Ethan said. "You put yourself between them and him. You took the beating to keep them away from Jacob. That's what parents do." "I'm not strong enough," Noah whispered. "Emma was the strong one. She would have known what to do. She would have—" "She wasn't there," Ethan interrupted gently. "You were, and you did the best you could in an impossible situation. That's all any of us can do." Jacob looked up at Ethan with those wide, scared eyes. "Those bad men said cowards pick easy targets. Are we easy targets?" The question hit Ethan harder than he expected. He pulled a chair over and sat down so he was at eye level with the boy. "You know what I learned in the military, Jacob? Real strength isn't about being able to fight. It's about showing up every day, even when things are hard. Your dad is one of the strongest people I've met." "But he got hurt," Jacob said. "Because he was protecting you," Ethan explained. "He could have run. He could have given them everything immediately. But he stood between you and them. That's real courage. Not fighting because you want to, but standing your ground because someone you love needs you to." Noah wiped his eyes with his free hand. "I don't know how to raise him alone. Every day I feel like I'm failing. I can't give him what Emma could. I can't afford the things he needs. I can't protect him from men with knives." "None of us can," Ethan said. "I've had the best training in the world, and there are still situations that could go wrong. But you know what? You're still here. Jacob's still here. That's what matters." A police detective entered the room, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes named Detective Rodriguez. "Mr. Bennett, I wanted to update you. The 3 suspects are in custody. We found their vehicle stolen, with evidence linking them to at least 6 other armed robberies in the area. The district attorney's office is very interested in prosecuting." "Will we have to testify?" Noah asked. "Likely, yes. But Mr. Morrison's testimony and the security footage will be crucial. These men are going away for a long time." After she left, Ethan stood to go. "You should rest. You've got a long recovery ahead." "Wait," Noah said. "Can I ask you something? How do I help Jacob get past this? How do I help him not be afraid?" Ethan thought about the question for a long moment. "You talk about it. You let him know it's okay to be scared. You show him that bad things can happen, but good people still exist. People who help, people who stand up." He paused. "And you teach him that being a victim doesn't make you weak. It just makes you human." 3 weeks later, Noah was back at work part-time, his ribs healing slowly. Jacob was seeing a therapist who specialized in childhood trauma. The nightmares came less frequently now, though the boy still insisted on sleeping with his light on. Ethan had visited twice more, bringing dinner and spending time with Jacob, showing him that not all strong men use their strength to hurt others. The boy had started asking questions about the Navy, about training, about courage. Noah watched these conversations with something that felt almost like hope. The 3 attackers had indeed been charged with multiple felonies. The district attorney, a colleague of Emma's who'd worked cases with her years ago, was personally handling the prosecution. "Emma was the best prosecutor I ever knew," she'd told Noah. "She believed in justice. This is for her too." On a cool Phoenix evening, Noah and Jacob stood in their small apartment's kitchen, making dinner together. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and store-brand sauce. But it felt like a victory. Jacob was laughing at something Noah had said, the first genuine laugh Noah had heard in weeks. Noah's phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. "How's the kid doing?" "Better," Noah typed back. "We're getting there." "Good. Remember, being strong doesn't mean you never fall. It means you get back up." Noah looked at his son, who was now singing off-key while stirring sauce, and felt something shift inside his chest. The grief was still there, it would always be there, a permanent absence where Emma used to be, but alongside it now was something else. Resilience, maybe, or hope, or just the determination to keep showing up, keep trying, keep being the father Jacob needed. Because that's what Emma would have done. That's what she'd taught him in the years they'd had together. Love means staying, even when staying is hard. Love means protecting even when you're scared. Love means getting back up no matter how many times you fall. And if 3 thugs in a parking garage had taught him anything, it was that the world had both darkness and light. People who hurt and people who help. Cowards who prey on the vulnerable, and heroes who step out of the shadows to make things right. The trick was teaching Jacob to recognize the difference and someday to be one of the helpers himself.